Okay.
There we go.
It is just a tad after 3:30, and I like to start right on time. So I'm going to call this Metro Flood Diversion Authority meeting for August 24th in order. Would you do roll call, please?
Dr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Vaniel?
Here.
Mrs. Sherling?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
I am here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Wayland?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Here.
Mr. Paulson? Mr. Thorsted?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Okay. So then the next is to approve the order of agenda. I assume everybody's had a moment to take a look at that.
I'll move to approve.
A motion by Grant, second by Chad. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, and the order of agenda is approved. We also have the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for that? I assume you've also looked at that.
I'd so move.
Motion by Grant, second by Chuck. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And I like to mess it up a little, just to make sure you're listening. So our minutes from the previous meeting are also approved.
You made it. Yeah, well, I'm after a bunch of meetings. Supposed to be here, but I'm doing it by phone. I'm like, yeah.
We can hear you. So be careful. Next, we have management with the project management team. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. Recent major activities and accomplishments. The Oxbow levee construction is underway, and Greg Bache is going to give you a more detailed update on that project, as well as the work going on at County Route 17 and 16, the realignment there. So we've got that underway. We released our RFP documents to proposers on schedule on July 28th. This week, we made our first appearance before the new State Water Commission members. I think Mayor Mahoney and others attended that meeting. And on the land acquisition side, we're continuing with our phase 1 and 2 acquisitions, as well as opportunistic land acquisitions all over the project site. Coming up in September, so you've probably noticed that we've talked about sending the Clomar letters out to individual property owners. We're still waiting on FEMA approval to do that, and we've got a bit of a discussion going on between FEMA and the Minnesota DNR on when that will be released. So when that's released, we'll send out individual notification letters to every property owner affected by the project. I mentioned that we released the new RFP on the 28th of July. We're receiving comments back on that. We'll begin again one-on-ones with the proposers again in September. We'll continue land acquisitions in September, including Wild Rice Control Structure Site. And as you may recall, we have an RFP out for flowage easement valuation study, and we'll initiate that contract in September. County Route 16 and 17 will continue in September, as well as the Oxbow Ring Levee construction. We have been looking at reviewing and updating the program's financial plan for the last several weeks now, based on new information on tax revenues, on new cost estimates. That work will continue in September also. And then we're all waiting for the judge to issue a ruling, and we'll determine whatever impacts those may have on the program once that ruling is released. So, any questions from the board? All right. If not, Rob Cowan's going to give an update on our financial status.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Robert Cowan with PMC. So I'll give you a status of where we stand on financials for the overall program and for this year. So overall to date for the program, we've spent $375 million out of the $2.2 million budget. So we're about 17% complete spent on that project overall. For the 2017 cash budget, $40 million to date out of the budget of $241 million. And that's any other questions or comments? turn it over to Greg for his construction update.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon. This will be really quick. So basically, in-town levies, we're still in pretty much the same status as I briefed prior. So basically, one of the things that's also going on with this one here is the contractors initiated an information request. Mr. Shockley is heavily involved in this, and so is we. So what we think they're probably doing is possibly trying to set up for probably some kind of future claim or something like that. But there's a lot of information flowing back and forth. They are continuing to work on their punch list items, but we're going to try to get them through this and get this all worked out. On the in-town, continue on for the A2, the pump station. So this is one of the project team has kind of been fine-tuning the pump. So the city's involved, the engineers are involved, and we're involved. There was some issues with the pumps, and they're just kind of fine-tuning them. So we're not really going to close out that contract until we're satisfied that the pumps are going to operate the way they should be operating. But other than that, everything else is pretty much well complete. On F1N, it's still working on the punch list. And then, of course, on F1S, that one that we've continued to brief that we can't finish that one out until we get the generator installed, which that's not due until, the building's not due for us to get in there until October. On the South Street levy, so same thing, progress. So what we're saying on this one here, so we've been forecasting that we're going to try to close this out in August and September. And if you notice, my note here has changed. It says will not occur until grass is growing and accepted. One of the things that we have found with some of the contractors out here is if you wait until, if you finish the contract and try to take care of that during the warranty period, a lot of times you just can't get them to come back. So the approach that we're taking on this one here is to keep the contract open until the grass is actually well established and accepted. And that's well within lines what we would probably normally do. So on the landscaping, we did issue a notice to proceed. Actually, that should have said the 7th of August, not the 15th. But they do have a notice to proceed, and the contractor is mobilizing. Right now, I think if you see anything out there, they're probably staking the site right now and probably preparing for the BMPs. On the levee work, so we're still working on the Schnell Drive and Riverbend. So all the stuff that's underneath of the levee footprint itself is done. So all those houses on Schnell Drive have been removed. We're in the process right now. As the contractor for 43 CD has actually already dug their investigation trench for the levee. So we're progressing quite ahead on that one. On the Riverbend side, so the Riverbend side, that one there is pretty much will complete. We're anticipating completion towards the end of this week. So everything's been moved off the site that was within their contract to move. The only thing that's remaining on their under the levee footprint would be the Champs House, which falls under the 43 CD contract. And I don't have the exact date on when that one's going to be moved out yet. But that one, that's up to that contractor, and it's well within his schedule. So once getting into the 43 CD, they were issued a notice to proceed on August 9th. I don't know if any of you have been out there yet, but you'll notice that the Highway 81 has already been removed. So that's pretty much all blocked off. You will actually, if you come from the south side, you'll see that there's a couple of houses that have been moved out onto the highway there. Those guys are still waiting for clearance to move the houses. That would be the Schnell Drive houses, but they're off the site as far as the levee is concerned. Oxbill Drive has already been milled up, so that was part of their contract there, was to mill that up. They'll start their trench work. One of the things that we're waiting for with the contractor there, they haven't started the trench work to relocate the utilities because we're still working on getting them an approved excavation plan. And so that way we have a good plan on there and they're executing it. And then they've already started the dust control on Main Avenue there in Baki. That was one of the big concerns was since Highway 81 is closed, is keeping the dust control down on Main Avenue there. It is signed for local traffic only, but you still got to people will go around those signs. We already did have one incident when we first put up the block signs on Highway 81 where some drunk golfers ran into one of our signs already on the barricades. So it is signed, and we are maintaining that. On High 81, we did also have the sheriff's department out there after that incident occurred, because we did have a problem with golfers going through Highway 81 while we're trying to work there. And the sheriff's department has been nice enough to provide a deputy out there periodically. She was out there for, I think, 2 full days after we had it closed, just to turn traffic around and get them off of the work site. Now there's things that they can't drive through there, so that we're good on that. Work package 28, Riley Brothers. So this is the Highway 1617 project. Our contractor's a little bit behind on mobilizing to the site, but they are mobilizing. They will start mobilizing more in next week, and we'll start seeing a lot of progress on that. We're not really too worried that they're not going to meet their deadlines. In fact, we're actually proposing right now to try to finish all the work before the winter hits, rather than phase it off and finish the concrete work next spring. But we are working with them, and they're giving us a lot. They're giving us a lot of assurance that they can get most of the work done, if not completely done, this year. So, yep, they're on a slow start. They know that, but they also have a 6-day work week. Any questions, concerns? Sir?
The 2 homes that were on south of the golf course.
Yep.
Allowed them to park there.
Yep.
They're gone.
No, they're still there.
They were told that, he told us that they'd be gone by end of August. So
Yeah.
we've got a couple days left.
So part of the issue, I think you're aware of the issue, part of that is getting the electric lines moved. That has, as far as I know, that work has been completed. And the last issue that I heard on those 2 homes was now the issue is they need police escort, which means that's a volunteer deputy to go out to do that, and they're having an issue getting somebody to volunteer to escort them. One of the houses is going to Minnesota, and that's where they're really having the issue of getting a police escort for it.
Mr. Schmidt was told that if they weren't gone by the 1st of September, we'd have a bonfire.
I know that. They're aware of that. And, and they're also aware that we don't want any more parked there as well. There is one that's parked at the beginning of the cul-de-sac, which is within their project limits, but there's no intent for that one to move down, further down by the highway. Any other questions? Sir?
Could you give me some indication as to the percent completion of the in-town work? I mean, a rough number about where we're at with the in-town levy work. And then the second to that would be, what is a projection for what year that you'd be looking at completing that?
So the work that's percent complete right now, I don't have that real offhand.
Most everything is 95+%
Yeah.
on all the projects.
So yeah, everything that's out there right now is about 95% complete, just punch list stuff. Are you referring to future work as well then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the total amount of work, if we're at 75% completed, or?
Yeah, I don't.
I don't need anything accurate, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I don't have that
I
information.
don't have a gauge. And work that'll take us the next few years.
Answer here.
There's the person.
Here's my man that's going to answer the question.
The projects that were going on last year, yeah, like Greg said, they're essentially done. They're all functional, operational, it's punch lists. We have one more project remaining that's essentially just the flood wall going across 2nd Street South right by Main Avenue. That's scheduled to get constructed next summer. So we're probably 90% done with all the stuff in town.
Okay, so probably the end of next year.
Yep.
Thank you.
So do you have some gaps? Do I understand that correct? Fargo does?
As far as what's needed for the diversion, after next summer, no, there will be no further gaps.
Gaps without the diversion?
Yes, we will, and we will continue to have those. But the diversion is our solution for that 100-year protection.
Okay, I just want to make that clear, I guess, in my mind.
Any other questions? All right, I'll be followed by the Corps.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Terry?
Terry Williams, Corps of Engineers. I'd like to direct you to the handout. I'll be working off of that. Number 2, status of the construction of the diversion inlet control structure. So the preloading was completed and all the channel excavation and placement of that material in the dam embankments is done. It's been topsoiled and I believe partially seeded. So if you would go out there now and drive on County Road 16 and look north and see the dam embankment that starts at one of the preloads and goes off to the east, that's at full height. So you can get an idea of how tall the dam embankment will be as it follows County Road 16. The next item of work for the inlet is doing a pile load test, and that should start the week of September 11th. And if you want to see what one of those looks like, you can flip it over to the back. This is one that we did on the Red River back in 2012. So it'll look probably just like this come September 11th. And what they do is actually drive pile and do some tests, take some readings to see how the piles are reacting to the soils, and that information is used to verify the design for the inlet, plus we'll use that information to design the wild rice and the Red River control structures. So number 3, the wild rice control structure, we're actively designing that structure. We'll be providing a 95% design to the sponsors for review on 1 December. And again, our goal is to award that in 2018 if we get funded. And as Randy said, we've requested that you go ahead and acquire the land so that we're ready to build that. Number 4 is the southern embankment design. We'll have the final PER coming up in November, if not sooner. And to support detailed design of the southern embankment, we've requested rights of entry in Minnesota along the southern embankment alignment. We have been wanting to do that for quite a while, and it's time now that we're starting detailed design. We need to get some borings along the center line of that alignment, and we need to do cultural resources testing. I'm going to jump down to number 8, project mitigation, environmental compliance. Last week we held another meeting with the natural resource agencies to talk about our ongoing mitigation efforts and then also some upcoming additional NEPA analysis we're going to do. And we had folks from North Dakota Game and Fish, North Dakota Department of Health, the State Water Commission, USGS, and MPCA also attended that meeting, and it was pretty much a day long. Everybody came to the inlet to view the construction in the morning, and the rain held off, so that was great. And then we had the meeting in the afternoon, and then on the morning of the 17th, most of them also joined our biotic sampling team down on the Cheyenne. So a good day and a half with our resource agency folks, partners. Number 9, biotic and geomorphic surveys. Our biotic team completed the fish sampling. And I have fish shocking on here, but I want to make sure everybody knows it's a catch and release deal. That, yes, they are shocked, but they do come back to life and we put them back in the rivers. So they'll be coming back in September to do the invertebrate sampling, and then we'll be all done with biotic. We will be awarding a geomorphic contract here shortly, and they'll be starting, hopefully in October, starting that work and completing that field work this year. If you want to see photos of our biotic team in action, you can look on the back. And I've never launched a boat that way. That's pretty difficult work. So we had a lot of, they were pretty tired by the end of the day, these guys. And you can see that this is the actual sampling part of it. And then the bottom is where he's weighing and measuring the fish. There's actually a video of this on FM Diversion, and there's a link there. You probably have seen that. On to cultural resources, number 10. We are preparing to do additional investigative work on the sites on the diversion. We're in the process of awarding a contract to do that. Our core staff, our archaeologist and our lead environmental person participated in a meeting with the Native American Commission on 8 August to continue tribal coordination that we've done with respect to cultural resources. And then there's also a one-page document that we've developed that talks about all the cultural resource work that we've done to date on this project, which started way back in feasibility, and then also all the consultation efforts we've done with the Native American tribes and the SHPOs in both states. So this is on fmdiversion.com right now, if you want to go read that. With that, that's all I had. Any questions?
Seeing none? Thank
All
you,
right,
Terry.
thanks.
Administration, legal. That's that you, Mike?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Authority. We have one brief update for you this afternoon, and that's on the Executive Director interview process for Jay Netter and Jay's second interview with the Board of Authority next Monday. First, thanks for your responses to the polling request. We found a date on Monday that we have several board members, a good number, that are available, so we look forward to having good participation. I just want to direct your attention to the middle of that schedule. Around the green box is the portions of the schedule that apply to the Board of Authority. You're going to be coming in at about 11:30. We'll have a box lunch available for you. And Pam Derby from CPS HR Consulting is also going to be on site. She's flying here on Sunday in addition to Mr. Netter, and she'll give a process overview of what you will be doing in your interview on Monday. And then we're also going to spend some time, since we're focusing on one candidate Monday, on the writing exercise that was done last time. So I'll have printouts of that. I'll have printouts of the full reference packet that was emailed out to the board earlier in the process, and I'll email that again with the final version of the schedule tomorrow as well. So you'll have all of the material that you need to conduct the interview on Monday, and then following that, you'll take a brief break after talking to the candidate and then talk about your next steps and what it is the board would like to do as it relates to the position, as it relates to Mr. Netter's candidacy, and we'll go from there. There is a 5-week gap between now and your next meeting. So likely, if there is a feeling that the board wants to move forward with this candidate and start negotiating terms and conditions of an employment agreement, we would need to have a special meeting in there. So we can talk about that as well next Monday. We don't have to cover that today. But a couple other topics I'll just highlight for you. Mr. Netter did request some time with our staff and with our consultants to talk about land management, talk a bit about property acquisitions, how that works in the process, and how that interplays with the P3 RFP and timing. And so I think we'll have a good discussion about that. Eric Dodds is going to help us out with that. And Robert and I will be participating as well. And then in the morning, we'll have all of our engineers that are available meet with the candidate again as well. And like I did last time, I'll summarize and put together a memo on behalf of the technical team with their feedback and impressions from their visit with Mr. Netter so that the board has that at your disposal as well as you talk about next steps. We do have a couple of our key folks that are going to be in St. Paul that day with the Corps. For a couple of days. Jeff Epsch and Nathan Borboom are both in St. Paul, but Bob Zimmerman and Mark Bittner, Robert, myself, Jason Benson, we'll be around and we'll participate in that process in the morning. So happy to answer any questions you have, but thank you again for your polling responses. Just want to give the board a courtesy heads up on the schedule and what it looked like.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Daryl?
Great, thank you.
Mike, thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, a question. Did you ask for, or did you have any luck in getting organizational charts from the various projects?
That's in that reference packet. We had
Okay.
some organizational charts. It was in that 70 or 75 pages of material.
great.
But we did get some of that, Daryl, so we can have Pam speak to that too on Monday. So good highlight. You bet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is that for it for administrative legal? John, okay. So public outreach, committee report. Ed.
Thank you. We had our public outreach meeting yesterday. You won't find anything in your packet today. And one of the things we had a very lively discussion about, how do we really answer the frustrating statements that are made that aren't correct? And you know, we've kind of bit our tongue over the years and just kind of let those go. But many times in outreach committee meetings, this has been brought up. And yesterday we had another lively discussion about this and how we could just correct these things that aren't right and aren't correct. And we asked the business leaders representative if she would explore ways that the business community could help us in that direction. And she graciously said yes. And I think we've all been frustrated, so we should all be part of this. She should be willing to put our name on an editorial and just to put out correct information. If we see something that's obviously pushing the public in the wrong direction. We want to keep our base. We want to keep the people that are going to be protected. We want to keep them engaged and get them to understand the correct information. And I think that's really difficult for people to grasp the correct information, and it's real easy to grasp the sensational information. So I guess I'm going to ask for your support from the Outreach Committee, and if you see something or if you want something really bothers you, you could talk to me, you could talk to Eric or Rocky, and maybe you can put something together that would maybe answer those, just that misinformation from time to time. We don't want to get into a back and forth, but maybe we can just lay out correct information, and that would be enough to refute maybe what isn't correct. Going forward, as we hire an executive director, we feel from the communications committee, we feel it's going to be very important for that person to really take the lead and to gain respect in the community, so that when he gets up and talks, that they'll listen and they'll believe what he says. And it'll take him, whoever we hire, it'll take them a while to get up to speed, but I think the transition will be for him to make these public comments and to put out the correct information. So, and we're here to support him. Our staff is here to support that effort. But going forward, I know that we've been frustrated, and anyway, we're working on maybe a better plan to do that. And I'm going to call on Rocky to show us a little video.
You know, one of the ways we combat this, which I think we've done a really nice job with everybody's help over the last 6 months, a year, is our Twitter account that we use for updating on the City of Fargo's website, on our website. It's sort of real-time updates that we use, and we like we call them our 3 questions videos, and we show this to the Outreach Committee, but Tony, you get to be famous again for a couple minutes here, 2 minutes. But we've had a series of these, and we're going to show one every month because I think they are one of the best things we do, and frankly, people trust you guys, and they want to hear from you. And gave 2 Kiwanis presentations this week, and people still have questions. You know, in Fargo and Moorhead, they have a lot of questions, and they rarely get the opportunity to have the discussion, is really the thing. So I encourage everybody to have those discussions.
I help work with local leaders to craft the legislation for the state commitment of $450 million that then was added $120 million for in-town flood protection. But really the blueprint was established in the legislation in the state Senate that had criteria, a P3 funding formula, federal funding for construction, and all the pieces in place that the local leaders have fulfilled that was set in stone in 2013. So as we stand here today with the sales tax that the citizens have resoundingly said yes to as a local share, to the state commitment that's been center stage and steadfast since 2013, and now the federal piece with construction funding available has tied this all together. And so, you know, it's a complex project with a lot of moving parts, but with all the financial acumen of outside help and assistance and our local talent, we've been able to put a sound plan together that's, as we know, has begun. We're treading new territory for the federal government to embark on a P3 project. So I think a lot of eyes and ears will be on watching what's going on here in Fargo with this project. At the end of the day, it's supposed to provide a more efficient, well-managed project and a much more cost-effective project because the private sector has to put skin in the game to make investment as well as the public sector. And so long-term, I think this is a wise best-case scenario or example, if you will, for the federal government to learn how we manage this project. You know, growing up as a kid in Mapleton, North Dakota, we fought floods all the time. I learned flood fighting from my father, if you will. I was involved in the 1997 flood in South Fargo. We've always been, you know, part of the community to help fight the floods. Personally, you know, it would be nice to say in my lifetime that we have crossed the Rubicon with not having to fight floods anymore, but having the diversion in place.
I'll just say that the nice part about this is we can track, you know, how many people watch these and for how long. And the more videos we have up on the website, it seems like our video traffic goes up every month, and the amount of time they watch them goes up as well. So I think they are successful, and like with, you know, Tony being a former state senator, I think that gets watched across the state, and that people trust that and then listen. And I think the same thing happens in Minnesota when we spoke to the legislative committee last Monday. Grant and Terry did a very nice job with that, but I think, and a lot of discussion on the bus too, and I think there's just a lot of communication that, and little discussions that need to happen. One other item, if it's okay, we've been working with the business task force. I know that their member isn't here today, but we've been working with them and NDSU looking at a study. The chamber's interested in working on this, about what are the impacts on economic impacts of construction of the diversion project. So just for sort of that 8-year period window of construction, what does that mean? You know, workers coming in, additional spending, you know, housing, everything else that goes into that, and they're getting to the next phase in that. But we all think that'd be a lot of interesting information that we can use in a variety of ways, let alone from policymakers for a lot of other reasons. And next up, next month, we have Commissioner Kevin Campbell, so we can all be very excited and make sure you come next month.
You won't want to miss it.
Thank you.
And Rocky, you're looking for volunteers, right?
We are. We're looking for volunteers. I think we've hit up most of you.
I wasn't given the choice.
Same here. I was told.
I think Mr. Hendrickson and Mr. Paulson are both on, or we've had them filmed and too, so they'll be up on deck or something. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate looking at this in sort of a many-faceted way. I get tagged a lot on Facebook, and I usually try, as Rocky was upset, not upset, but noted I started engaging early in the game, and then I quit because, you know, it's like every sentence. So how do you do every sentence, right? You know, so really has the job cut out for them. For instance, I think one of the ones last week was that I was parroting the 820 houses in Moorhead from Fargo folks making up that number. And the truth is, it was way back when Denny was here and we did a tour, and I was sitting next to Bob, and I said, so what would be the numbers in Moorhead? And he gave me an estimate, and then as Bob would, you know, he wants to be right? He's an engineer. So he went and did the numbers to it, and then he came back with me to 820, hence the numbers. It wasn't Fargo folk, it was Moorhead folk, really. But, you know, how do you do each line, you know, that they say, and then try to, you know, in a coherent way that people get it and aren't, you're not doing this back and forth just being nasty to each other, right? So thank you for taking that on. Then we're down to land management, correct? And who is going to report on that?
Well, I've got land management, but Roger, do you want to go ahead and take that since you're sitting right there?
Help me.
Okay, well, I can do it. Land management.
Actually, Mary Eric is getting up. Maybe can give a little information of what we talked about.
I'll just recap that. Really, Randy and Terry have covered most of everything that we discussed yesterday with the right-of-way requests for wild rice, the cultural mitigation meeting that was held, and the RFP is out for the valuations for the flowage easements. So really, item 7B with Eric can give a pretty good overview. So
Great.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Mary. Good afternoon. In your packet, a couple pages back is a map, front map, item 7B. I think you're familiar with this report. I'll maybe just hit on a few things on the second page, the page with all the color-coded parcels. So you'll note here that we continue to make progress. There's, again, green is good. We want more green on the map, and we're seeing more green each month. Next best to green is purple, and if you look closely, there is a handful of parcels that are purple. So green, we've acquired over 180 parcels. There's another 16 that have purchase agreements. When this was produced, we've added a few more since then. So we're getting close to that 200 number. There are another couple hundred that are active in negotiations right now, and a few others that have appraisals underway. And so we're making progress. Most of that progress is north of 94, as you can see on the report. However, we do have a variety of opportunistic acquisitions in the staging area and southern embankment area, as well as parcels down by the Cheyenne Diversion just south of Horace that we're also making progress on. A few other things you might notice on this map, if you're paying close attention from differences from last month. This one has a variety of yellow highlighted parcels that are scattered kind of throughout the region. Those are parcels where we have acquired rights of entry to do some biotic and geomorphic testing. As Terry pointed out, their crews were out sampling fish recently. These rights of entries, in some cases, gained them access to do that fish sampling. Ultimately, we will need to get easements on many of those yellow parcels as well. And so the right of entry was kind of step one. They'll be reassessing where exactly they need access, and then we'll be securing long-term easements on many of those yellow parcels. Altogether, with all of those parcels counted up, there's roughly 1,800 parcels that we need some type of property right upon. 2/3 of those are easements only. And the other third is roughly we need to do some acquisitions. So I'll stop there, I guess, and see if there's any questions.
Kevin?
Yeah, I want to touch base on, and it also has to deal with Terry's report from the Corps in terms of the southern embankment design that's going to go on, and the need for some soil borings to sooner or later take place on the Minnesota side. And I know we've, on the North Dakota side, that's been done through the Water Board, and we have not formally established how we're going to do that on the Minnesota side for, property owners who may not be so willing. And, so I think we're going to, maybe Mayor, we're going to have to work together and come up with, I know there's been some discussion about forming some sort of a authority that would work on that, but I think we're going to need to do that because design is important, and we've seen what can happen if the design doesn't stay on track, and it can cause some additional problems. I say that, of course, with kind of walking on glass with the state of Minnesota right now, so we need to be careful that we don't violate anything that's out there in terms of orders. But I think we do need to step up that process, and I know I've got our county administrators here, and so I think we need to get together and work maybe with our county attorneys to come up with that plan. So, but it's pretty critical to keep that moving forward.
Good point. I wasn't thinking about the timing, but planning, yeah. Any other questions for Eric or anyone else? Okay.
The only thing else I might just add briefly, I think you're all aware that we have an RFQ on the street to retain an appraisal firm to do evaluation of flowage easements. That advertisement has been running for several weeks now. The proposals are due back September 7th, And we hope to be ready to make a recommendation to the Cass County Joint Board at their September 14th meeting, getting that firm at least recommended, and then there'll be some contractual processes that follow at that point. So looking forward to getting that rolling. I know there still continues to be a lot of questions about what is the value of a flowage easement, and this is really going to be a key step in figuring out that question.
Eric, do we have a timeline?
We're asking the proposers to propose a timeline. I would anticipate it'll take them at least a year to complete this effort. So it's not gonna turn around quickly. They will be leaning on the study that NDSU is updating right now, and they will be leaning on the model that FEMA is on the verge of approving shortly. So.
And then, if you just explain at the end of the year, what's the product that we're gonna have?
What we're anticipating, and recognize this is an RFQ, and so we're soliciting sort of good ideas from the proposers. But what we're anticipating is to have what I'm kind of calling a foundational report that will explain what the value of flowage easements are for all the parcels in the staging area. It's not going to be a individual appraisal of each property, but yet more of a foundational report that'll have a lot of background information. They'll look at comparable sales. They'll have data from up and down the Red River Valley, and maybe beyond that if there's not enough data locally. And then they'll be able to dig in and propose a value for each individual parcel of farmland, not for parcels with structures, but for farmland. And then the idea would be we would use that information to go out and meet with property owners and propose getting agreements at this valuation effort. If we're able to secure those agreements with property owners, then great. We'll be moving forward with the easements. In some situations, I suspect the property owners might not be agreeable, and so in that situation, we may have to use that foundational report to produce an individual appraisal on those properties. We know that there's probably at least 500 appraisals that would need to be done if we did them all individually, and 500 appraisals times $4,000 or $5,000 per appraisal, that's $2 million plus just in appraisal fees. And so we're trying to be conscious of that. We think that this foundational approach will help us sort of manage those costs and expectations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Finance, committee report?
Absolutely.
Tony?
Madam Chair. Nothing unusual to report. It's consistent with prior months. We're tracking on budget. Item 8A in your packet. First page shows cumulative total spent on the project to date of, I'm going to have to get new glasses. I think that says $372 million.
Mm-hmm.
Page 2 shows our cash. All since at $78 million. The third page shows the FY17 budget with $118 million yet to be drawn down, largely in the land acquisition column that we expect to continue to be drawn down towards the end of the year. And then list of itemized expenses. Happy to answer any questions on that document. Finance Committee did approve and accept the report.
Okay.
With that, I'd make a motion.
Second.
You're making the motion to accept the
Yep,
committee
yep.
report. There's a second by Kevin.
Mhm.
Any more comments, questions? Always do roll call votes for these?
You can, or you can do a voice vote if you want. This would be a voice vote, I think, myself, but that's just me. Totally up to you.
I think I'll do that for that, if you don't mind. The other more pertinent ones, we'll do roll call. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And the committee report is approved. Then we have some vouchers.
Yeah, item 8B in your packet then would have the request for payments for totaling $9.5 million, 9.6. Cass County Joint Water Resource District, Dorsey Whitney, Onsted Twitchell, Cass County Government, Eric Johnson and Associates, Gerson Lerman, and HKA Global. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on that one?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Voice vote, okay? No, you would like to do approval?
I do roll call for
call?
this financial.
Gotcha. Okay.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Okay, and then that is approved, and then we're down to the contracting actions.
Owen for that.
Good afternoon again. Going over the recommended contracting actions, so just report out on the screen. These are some of the actions that the co-executive directors have approved. These are task order amendments for HMG for continuation of their existing services. So you'll see task order 7, task order 20, and then task order 24, which is services during construction for the recent award for the realignment of County Roads 16 and 17. And then some additional task orders, amendments that were approved through the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. So these are also continuation or closeout amendments for task order 1s and task order 3. And then also utility work plan agreement that was a reduction in cost of $12,000. Recommended contracting actions for this committee that has been reviewed by the TAG and also recommended by Finance Committee yesterday. The first one is for fiber optic relocation, that's Sprint Communication. This is associated with the project that was also awarded for construction of the 43 CD levee in Oxbow. So this is to support that effort to relocate the Sprint Communication line. So as I said, it's been recommended by TAG, also by Finance. So it's recommended for motion for this board for approval.
Any questions? Do I have a motion for
Move
this?
for approval.
Motion
Second.
by Tony, second by Darrell.
Yes.
We have a voice, roll call vote for that one too, please.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Okay. The next one on the list is also similar to the Sprint one. This is for CenturyLink Communications. It's also a communication line that is associated with the 43 CD levee work as well. So this is also a utility relocation that's been reviewed and recommended by TAG as well as Finance. So we recommend for this board for approval as well.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Tony, second
Second.
by Chuck. Roll call, please.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And motion carried. Thank you. Next
Right.
one.
And then the last one on the list is a construction change order. This one is for Reiner Construction. It is a closeout amendment, so this is a finalization of quantities to be able to close out this contract and have the final contract amount. It's a reduction of $1,700 in the contract, and again, it's been reviewed by the TAG group as well as the Finance Committee and recommended for approval from the board.
Move for approval.
Motion by Tony. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by
Roger.
Roger.
Yep.
Thank you, sorry. Can I get a roll call vote for that too, please?
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Madam
Great.
Chair, just a
That
comment.
carries.
It was, as I noted earlier, it was a pretty straightforward finance meeting yesterday, but we had a short conversation around the preparation for next year's budget. Mr. Cowan commented that that process is underway, and we're going to have that moving through in September. And point made is I'd like to see we have a little more detailed work with the co-executive directors or staff alongside of Mr. Cowan's work to really look at the overall engineering fees and fees for this project. And as we've discussed at prior authority meetings and part of the finance model has been reported in the past that we should start seeing a decrease in fees. And so I think it's incumbent on us to really have a deeper dive, understand the history and the discussions we've had in the past as that correlates into the next year's budget, so we see evidence of that. And in particular, if you look at the overall $2.2 billion budget, we have a line for fees. In my opinion, I think given where we're at, we should really have a concerted effort to try and reduce that overall budget line and see that trend start in 2018. And so I think it's important that we get into the details of that particular line item as we get prepared for next year's budget. So it was a comment and a discussion point yesterday, and I know Mr. Vanu and I visited about that, Mr. Redlinger, and whether we have a separate finance committee on that topic, look at the timelines, et cetera, and talk to the committee. But I think it's an important item to recognize.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Okay, so then we're down to other business. Is there any other items? I just want to note, because we won't be meeting for a while, September 7th, the Red River Basin Commission is meeting. I'm always intrigued with that one because it brings all the interested parties together all in one room and very cordially talking with each other, right? So that's a good thing. With that, notice that the next meeting is September 28th with the potential of having a additional meeting in between. And no other comments, I will then adjourn us. Thank you.